the wilderness experience. Ask Moses for 40 years after killing an Egyptian. God sent him to school to get a PhD in humility in the wilderness. He had to run away from his kindred into the desert for 40 years to learn what humility is, what meekness is. That is wilderness experience. Sometimes God leads us to those places to have a good lesson. Wilderness experience gives us lessons of life so that we are saved. Oh yes, ask Jesus himself. 40 days and 40 nights he was communing with God in the wilderness. And the devil came 3 times to tempt him. And he conquered. Ask Hagar. Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, the concubine to Abraham. They were to learn to depend on God and to trust on his providence and guidance. Each of us has once experienced his or her refuge. It is possible, listen to this one. Listen to the preacher and Pastor Akon today. Listen to the preacher. Listen to this one. It is possible to be in the will of God, yet in a season of great problems. It is possible to be in the will of God, yet in a season of great problems. It is possible to be in the will of God and suffer unemployment. You may be in the will of God and death strikes your family. You may be in the will of God and you suffer betrayal like Joseph. You may be in the will of God and be thrown into the cistern like Jeremiah. You may be in the will of God and you are killed like Isaiah. Isaiah was martyred in the time of King Manasseh. He was sawn apart because he was preaching fearlessly against apostates. You may be in the will of God and still be stoned like Stephen. What matters is when the trumpet shall sound, which side will you be? My prayer is, when I slip into the dust of the ground, I have a better resurrection. When this corruptible shall put up the incorruptible. Hallelujah. We have our own refugees. We have different difficult and painful circumstances in our lives. In 2021, this is the worst year. I don't think I will experience this one again. We lost in our family. We lost 6 people in a week. COVID-19. And it took even my father-in-law. I don't want to make a cry. 6 people. People are at a funeral. I could not fly back to Zimbabwe. I was in South Africa. Wanting to go to the airport, we are with COVID ourselves. We could not travel. And back home they were saying, don't even come because the rest of us are affected. People are at a funeral, they are burying, they are calling to say, this relative is gone, dead, COVID-19. The grave has enlarged its appetite. People are dying like flies. When we are approaching the borders of eternity, Christ promises us that there will be pestilences and diseases. When we see these things happen, let us look up. So our redemption is drawing nigh. We have health problems, our refugees. When you are there, you are tempted to think that God does not exist. Does Jesus care? Does Jesus care? When I am in such problems, does Jesus care? When you are in health problems, cancer is eating you up a lot, depression, does Jesus care? Hold on to the hem of his garment when you are in health problems. You connect to him through prayer. Prayer is so powerful. You cry, God, whatever, I will not murmur. I will hold on to you by faith. If I die and I'm interred into the ground, I will have a better resurrection. We have spiritual challenges. Some have attacks from the devil. Our refugees. Family problems. Divorce. Abuse. Today, they say, is therefore violence against women. Stop it. End it now. Family challenges and social problems. Unemployment. Financial problems, loneliness, and lack of support. And you start asking, am I still in the will of God when I'm suffering all this? You try to check and you see that you have not sinned, you have not done anything wrong, but you are still facing these challenges. You may be in the will of God, but suffer all these challenges. Elijah suffered that challenge when he was in the will of God. But God had to spread a table in the wilderness. Yes, Elijah, I like this spectacle. No, I like to dramatize and I imagine too much. I always ask myself, what manner of faith Elijah standing before the prophets of Baal, he was alone. And he taunted them. I ask myself, what if fire did not come from heaven? What was going to happen? Elijah was a risk taker. He really believed he was connected with God. This is the faith we are supposed to have. Where God seems to be silent, his silence speaks louder than words. When we face our challenges, let us remember, ye God, the uncaused cause. Jesus, Emmanuel, is always with us. He is called Emmanuel because he's God with us. There is no point in history where he has left his people to suffer alone. He walks with us. That's why the song says, he leadeth me. Jesus is leading us. I am a faithful follower. I'm going to follow because he leadeth me. A story is told of a father walking in the forest with his son. As they were walking in the forest, the father was ahead. The father was ahead. And the father said, whenever I jump, whatever step I take, follow. Imitate. So there was a point in the forest where the father had to jump. So he jumped. And the son followed. He jumped. Then the father said, wait here. Let us look back. What do you see? And it was a big python lying on the ground. When we are with God, let us just follow God. When the father showed the son what they had jumped, the point where they had jumped, there was a huge anaconda or a python. When we focus on God, we don't see these problems. When Jesus says jump, we jump. But with Dolo, you see these problems and they are going to overcome you. Let us focus on Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. Because we are surrounded by a crowd of witnesses. Hallelujah. Verse 2. Verse 2. I'm left with 10 minutes, right? I'm going at supersonic speed. Verse 2. It says,